Hello and welcome to the weekly rugbyleaguecoach.com.au analysis of the Intrust Super Cup. My name is Lee Addison. I hope you are well and I hope you are gearing up or enjoying, as you watch this, a happy 2023 Easter period. Now, this Easter period is going to end up with a team that hasn't won a game so far this year getting off the mark. This week, we're looking at the Ipswich Jets versus Western Clydesdales game. I thought, because they are playing each other, I thought I'd do an analysis directly looking at each team and what the pros and cons are of each team's offence and defence. So to set you some context for this, I've not actually watched the video yet. I just picked out some random clips, put them together, and I'm now going to analyse them with you as live, if you like. So if I can, I'm going to share my screen. You should be seeing the Tigers on the left and the Ipswich Jets on the right. This is from last week's game against Brisbane Tigers. They break from a scrum here, chesty collision. But as you can see, number 13 ends up on top and in control. And I love that peel off, actually. Although I do believe that number 13, I'll just rewind it there. Number 13 should have been the first marker rather than the second. So this marker here should have been the second marker and this one should have been the first. Otherwise, it was quite a controlled peel off because you see there number 13 went the longest journey to get back. Line speed's pretty good at this juncture. But again, another chesty collision. Did you see how the Jets player was knocked back there? And this is my problem with chesty collisions. They go in with the chest to catch. I prefer to see a shoulder drive in to stop the momentum of the runner, because when you've got a runner who comes hard onto the ball like that, they invariably find their front. Although I really do like the way the Jets are trying to control the ruck. At the end of the day, they've come up with a system. They're going with it. And so far, our first two tackles have done really well in that sense. But the collision part let them down there, I think. Little bit worried about this defensive structure, how the two defenders are hanging back. And also, these guys are coming up and out. This one's still got his hips square, but the centre here is a little bit detached and the wing is already starting to turn his hips in. So let's see how that unfolds. Because of that space that's been left, the choice of pass from the 6 for the Tigers wasn't a bad option, and he got his nose through there. So there's a few things in the Jets' defensive line already that I'm finding aren't really maximising the line speed that they've already brought and some of the ruck control that they've already brought, because the collisions and then also the discipline in that line wasn't great, and it's costing them meters and momentum. Let's have a look at this defensive line. Probably overslid a little bit there. Probably needs to stay on the inside shoulder. But otherwise, good defence overall. So, I mean, look, you'd rather have a team that overslides than underslides. I'm a bit worried about how number 7 went straight back to his part there. Let me just look at that again. So, number one, you've got to ask yourself, how's number 7 ended up in this? Well, he's ended up in this because the Jets tackler sort of spun the attacker around in his direction. But he's in the ruck there. I would prefer him not to have to run directly to his position, because you never know how quickly the ball's going to be played. I would prefer to see him go straight back into the defensive line and then shuffle across if he's got time, right? Because if this was a quicker play the ball, they could be in real trouble. And as you can see from the spacings here, the Jets aren't consistent. And they do indeed go down that area, but then switch it. I've not seen a switch for a while, actually. Again, chesty collision. That wasn't a chesty collision, and the momentum of the runner was very well stopped, and that's my point. I'm quite impressed, though, overall with the Jets' defence. I just think it's got little things that it needs to improve. Sorry if my microphone keeps dipping out a little bit. It does that occasionally. Cheap one, obviously. Bit of tackle technique problem here. Let's have a look. Well, first of all, let's look at the way they got off this run. So there's 3 players in. One loses his feet. I mean, that's always a problem. Try and keep your feet if you want to get some tackling purchase and get some control. Of the 3 that are in the ruck, the one that was lay on the floor has gone back first. whereas you could argue the one stood up maybe should have got back first. And he's late, so they've effectively got one less defender in the line. They've probably overloaded it with numbers as well, and that was a poor missed tackle there that let in the try. Keep looking at their defence. There are a few players in the defensive line whose techniques are a little bit scratchy. A few of them feet aren't close when they tackle. Already I've just seen number 6 there might have a little issue with that. It's not a fatal issue, but it's just something that might get targeted. You see that he fell around the back of the tackle there too. There is a common thing here with Jets players landing on the floor, which relates to their technique. So, as you can see, again, number 6 on the floor, they're losing the feet. So when they go in with the chest, if the feet aren't close and they don't keep the studs in the ground, that they can lose their feet quite easily. There's that defensive line again that showed a little gap. Now, the problem I have with this now, we've had 2 clips. And each time, this defence from the centre to wing has been a little bit behind the normal spirit of the line, and both times the Tigers have attacked it. So I actually think it's causing them some problems. I think the right centre and wing need to be in the line because they've ended up trying to catch him there, but the Tigers have got the roll on. And the Clydesdales are going to have some fun in that area if they want. And that's poor kick. Poor dealing with kick there, and the Tigers had a look a little bit later. I think you'll find again poor collision from 6. He gets knocked back. So already looking at this, I'm thinking a Clydesdales tactic might be to go at the number 6 there. Sorry, I don't have his name and won't look for his name. This is all about the tactics. And also look at the far right centre and wing who tend to hang back the defensive line, and there they do it again. And it can be something that can allow them to get some go forward and momentum. So there's plenty of spirit in this Ipswich Jets defence, but I would say they're probably operating at about 6 out of 10 at the minute with regards to collision and line discipline. You always expect 1 or 2 players in your line not to have the best technique at times, but it doesn't mean they can't work on it. But let's have a look and see what the Clydesdales can come up with an attack against that. Here's the Clydesdales feeding the scrum against the Falcons last week. I do think that's a great carry from number 3. I'd like them to consider moving and having options on the short side after a run like that, because it looks pretty obvious where the ball's going, and indeed it went to where I thought it would. But that's 2 great carries, so they're going to cause, based on what we've seen in the Ipswich Jets defensive line, they're going to go forward with that chesty contact that the Jets have. And if they can get down and play the ball quickly, that will create a momentum situation for the Clydesdales. Now, looking at the Jets' defence, the left of the Falcons' defence is what we'd be looking at in terms of where we said that ill-disciplined line and the right centre and the right wing of the Jets were. So let's see what they come up with left side attack, the Clydesdales. Again, I just find this attack a little bit, because of the area of the field that they're in, I find it a little bit one out in terms of I'd like them to throw a little bit more. It was early in the game from memory, and therefore they probably wanted just to complete, but they've got to throw more at the Jets this weekend. They've got to throw more to the edges of the defence. I mean, in the few clips we have seen of the Jets, they conceded a try on the edges or from a kick. So it suggests to me that the Clydesdales are going to be a little bit more lateral when they have the field position, because they took an awful long time to get to that position. So let's have a look now. They've done a shift here, and I think it must be tackle 4 or 5. Yeah, there's a little bit of something holding up the line. I don't mind that. But again, it's this obsession with hitting the front man. Now, again, if they'd have gone out the back, they could have had an overlap, but no, they went short. And again, you can take these things out of context sometimes, but every time I see somebody go short, it tends to be the wrong decision, I find. So, and you always have to look again as well about what they do after a line shot. And They've just turned the ball back inside, which suggests that they go into the middle to see split halves on each side of the ruck. Indeed, there's a 6 again. This time he does go to the back, but that was probably the wrong option. I do like this second phase. I do like this offloading. I'm looking back now at the earlier hit-ups, and they must have got a repeat set, hence the length of the clip. Again, frontman option, though. Go back and exploit the overlap. It's only a few rounds in, and it's only a few rounds in, and it's a front marathon. They've got a repeat set again, so they've had a lot of pressure here, but I still don't think they've thrown an awful lot at the Falcons. Yeah, I mean, the ball needs to move a lot more, because look how many Falcons men are in the screen there. There's at least half the team there, and they end up losing possession. So it suggests to me that they've got a little bit more in their armory that they can call upon. Again, so both sides, if they go in with a run to bust mentality, but then if they don't get through in that split second, decide to get down and play the ball quickly, they're going to have some joy. Because I would say, though, that based on what I've seen, I would back the Jets to control the ruck better, because their ruck control techniques were better before they got to the floor. I mean, only a couple of clips there, and we've already seen the Clydesdales under pressure for opposition go forward and giving away a penalty. And the Jets are going to feed off that, I would have thought. Let's have a look at what happens from this penalty. Very common thing I see. There are just so many men on the short side here or trapped on this side of the play the ball. So the Jets might want to look at a hit up and an early shift to tie this amount of defenders in. And I do find that the Clydesdales are launching in quite far into the tackle as well. Let's see if I can support that theory. Feet aren't bad there, to be fair, and it was a bit of shoulders. But again, like the Jets, losing feet in the collision on this side not too bad. You see how the studs are still in the collision? That allows them to get purchase and control. Let's have a look at the unload. Not bad at all, Clydesdales, not bad at all. Marker system, so if the Jets want to look at throwing a bit around the ruck, it looks like they've got a marker chase system there, but there was no cover at all by the look of it at the A defender area, so the Jets might want to look at exploiting that. I do get the impression so far there's no obvious weak tackler in this Clydesdales side. I've had to redo that because I'm struggling to say Clydesdales. That is a chested collision. Maybe I spoke too soon, but they controlled it quite well. Let's have a look at the unload. Yeah, perfect. I like that. You could argue number 12 went the longest journey, but the other two were in control of the ruck, and it's all lined up. This line, not bad at all, and dealt with well. So again, my only concern there is the way that the Falcons march down the field, and that again comes down to collision and ruck control. Here comes the dropout. So the Clydesdales have made quite a lot of tackles now, and it's a repeat set. Number 12 lost his feet there. That would have been from his tackle technique. Let's see if we look at that. Again, yeah, you see there, number 12 is coming in from the back and losing his feet. And I guess they've got to be so careful now. They're going to get accused of hip drops when you come in from the back like that. That's not a bad collision, but he did lose his right foot and then lost both his feet. So I keep going to this theory of keeping your feet in the ground when you tackle. That allows you to have more purchase when you're trying to stop the attacker. The defense and tackling, you get the power from your legs, basically. And if you take your studs out of the ground, you have no power. So then you have to go into somebody who wrestles with the upper body, if you like. And that's where the hip drop becomes more of a threat. I mean, there's a couple of tackles here. If they were in the NRL, I reckon some people would be calling for a hip drop. And the other thing that happens is attackers do play on it too. They spin themselves around and pull faces as if they hurt. I do worry there a little bit about what number 6 did in this tackle. So let me have a look. So we've got that collision, lost a bit of feet, but the ruck control's really good. I'm quite impressed with the Clydesdales defence, if I'm honest. Even though both them and the Jets have been losing heavily last week, you see how 6 just sits back here. I'd like to see the 2 and 3 defender actually a little bit closer, because there's a lot of attack gets focused around these areas, as we've seen from the clips. The obsession with the short man, the short lead. So 6 needs to stay neutral, and then the centre here stays tight and then detaches if the ball goes out the back, but keeps his hips square. Whereas 6 sort of sits quite early and is a sitting duck, and then he has to react to it. And I think that's possibly the problem in that defensive line there, why they only just clung on, in that they're not quite a unit in that sense. Some were ready to sit and some were still moving. So I hope that made some sense to you there, because the 6 sat down and then had to quickly readjust. But ultimately, they didn't concede. The Falcons go back to the middle. There's another not bad example of ruck control there. I do think, though, there's a slight difference in the Clydesdales are doing it quite fast. So the tempo of your defence should be fast, line speed, hard collision, but then slow, trying to control the ruck. And I don't see the Clydesdales doing that. I feel they're doing it a little bit one-paced, if you like. Fast. And there's that problem there with the uneven defensive line again. So they had everything covered there. So the defence is moving up and out there, but because that player there with the red boots on jumped in, this man needed to join him and jump in too and try and take it. Instead, they've jumped in and not followed each other, flies in like Superman to make the tackle. These guys are too wide, and this is what I was saying on the other side about the 3 in defender and the 2 in defender being closer together, and that's actually created the gaps for them to exploit the Falcons. If they were closer together and moving up and out, they would have been able to predict where the Falcons go. Instead, they've created the space, and this is what happens sometimes when defences aren't aligned. So now let's have a look at some of the Jets' attack and let's see what they can muster. Here come the Jets, +1 to the middle of the field. I do like my +1s in that area, but it all depends on where the Tigers readjust and what they do after that. And yes, they've gone +1 again. So far, I'm really happy with this. And the pace of the 6, I know I had a bit of a worry about his tackle technique, but I see why he's in the team just right there. Now, what I'd like to see from the Jets on Saturday, they've just brought the Brisbane Tigers defence up across back with 2+1s. So I'd like to see them ask more questions of these defenders at the top of the screen. By sending in another attacker direct like that, they're basically just allowing the Tigers defence to readjust back again. Let's see what they come up with on this play. Well, now we'll put that into a bit of context. They've brought them back to go back at them again. And let's see if that works. Look, against the Clydesdales, because of that uneven nature of that defensive relationship in these positions, they're going to have some joy here, the Jets, but number 4 needs to be screaming into a hole. Tigers are defending a lot better, and that's why the line stays intact. So something like that from the Jets will work this week. It's not a bad set at all, really. I do see this quite often. Once they've had their crack, so they've set up for something and had their crack, the tackle after it can be sometimes a little bit of a write-off. And this one smacks of this a little bit. They've just sort of moved the ball and nobody really knows what's happening, and they're just moving it for the sake of moving. What I'd like to see them do on Saturday is shift right back to the opposite side, because I think that's going to cause the Clydesdales defence some trouble. Yeah, they're just sort of having a throw around here to see if they can find something. So basically the first 4 tackles were okay, and then the last couple here have been really scraggy. So a bit of an effort from Jets to have a crack at one side and then immediately crack at the other is probably the goal this weekend. Let's have a look at this +1 again. They like the +1s by the look of it in the middle of the field. And again, these sets have been picked out quite randomly, so please understand that. And there's not much context to what I'm putting in there. errors like that aren't going to help, are they? Let's have a look at them in good ball. There's enough good players in this Jet side to make something of this season for sure, and I know for a fact that they'll get some more in as well. Yeah, there's the front man obsession again, but it actually wasn't a bad hole, but he did get well controlled. I like that from 14, throwing a disguise in. But that's twice now that the Jets have ploughed through from having done a play, they've ploughed directly through. And from before saying that they probably needed to throw something at them, they've then gone through and scored a try. Now, what is key to see here, though, is that there was an offload. So they are throwing something different. And what they did expose there was the fact that a couple of Tigers players were really spaced out wide. So my prediction for the weekend is the Jets. And bear in mind that the Jets are 15th and the Clydesdales are 13th. That's because neither of them have won a game, but I think Clydesdales have had the bye. That's why they're a bit higher. So I think the Jets at home this weekend are going to do it. The Jets have got to play a little bit more laterally at times, and particularly after they've had a crack at one side, they've got to be ready to have a solid and structured crack at the other side. Clydesdales just need to get that second lot of tempo into their defence. So when they're going in, good line speed, good tackle, control the ruck a little bit slower. In attack, I just think that they need to have something a bit more structured that's going to ask a few more questions of the Jets defence. So I'm thinking Jets by about 18, though, this weekend, 16-18. Enjoy your football this weekend. Have a great Easter. Take care.